In this series, we'll take an in-depth look at the wonderful world of animal communication, and specifically the many species found here on Shamwari Private Game Reserve. When we're talking about animal communication, it can be any process where information is passed from one animal to another, causing a change or response in the receiving animal. Animals communicate using various signals, which can include visual, like plumage in birds to indicate breeding readiness, auditory or sound-based, which is the most commonly detectable signal for us as humans, chemical, which involves pheromones, like in termites and lions and elephants, or tactile, which is touch-based communication. Communication most often happens between members of the same species. This we call intra-species communication. It can also take place between members of different species. This we call interspecies communication. An example of this would be a blesbok or a springbok giving a warning snort to a lion walking across the plain. The springbok is telling the lion, "I've seen you, I'm giving you a warning, don't bother trying to hunt me." Although seemingly tranquil, the African bush is truly a choir of spectacular proportion. Humming, buzzing, chirping, squealing, huffing and grunting, even roaring with life. In this series, we'll take an in-depth look at the wonderful world of animal communication, and specifically the many species found here on Shamwari Private Game Reserve. Nature has a flourishing spectrum of sounds, each distinct and with its own purpose. Despite this endless resonance of the African bush, not all communication is auditory, and many species use a variety of methods to communicate, and for different purposes. A male lion's roar is perhaps the most characteristic sound that comes to mind when it comes to lions. But it's by far not the only sound they make. Both male and female lions demonstrate ownership of territories with roaring, and they're able to gauge the strength of opposition prides based on the number of roars heard from other groups. Softer contact calling is also utilized by lions to communicate with their cubs and members of a pride. Growls and grunts are also a common form of communication amongst the pride, and it's used to indicate dominance within the pride hierarchy and displeasure. This is especially common during a feeding frenzy, where each lion wants to get their fair share of a carcass. In addition to auditory signals, lions also use visual cues to communicate with each other. Unlike any other cat, a lion's tail has a black tassel at the end, which first appears when it's between 5 and 7 months old. This can be used to lead other lions through long grass. Females raise their tails to give a follow me signal to their cubs, and also to use it to communicate with each other when hunting prey. A lion's tail is also a good sign of how it is feeling. By flicking its tail, a lion can indicate irritation, just like a domestic cat. We often use this when we're walking lions on trail. If we see a lion flicking its tail, we know it's annoyed with us. A male lion's mane is also used as a visual stimulus. When one male is competing in a fight against another male, they try and puff their mane up. They try and expand their mane to make it look as big and imposing as possible to show off their size and strength. Another way lions communicate is via chemicals or pheromones. Lions are often seen baring their teeth and inhaling through their mouths to allow pheromones and other scents of the female lion's urine to reach the organ of Jacobson. This is called the phlegm and grimace, and the organ is found at the base of the nasal cavity. The phlegm and grimace response is a way for lions to analyze the information that is left via the urine from other lions. And it is used to determine the reproductive status of females, territorial markings of nomadic male lions, and general information from within the pride, pertaining to sex, age, and reproductive status. Lions also use tactile communication with one another. This is in the form of touch, and it is displayed in various manners, from rubbing up against one another, nuzzling, and licking. These signals are used between members of the pride as a form of endearment and to establish hierarchies. We often see lions rubbing heads against one another, like a typical house cat. These lions are transferring scent from their lip flange glands onto one another. Not only is it a way of showing affection, but it's also transferring a common scent within the pride so that all lions smell the same within the pride. After failed hunts, lions are often seen rubbing and physically interacting with one another, re-establishing those important bonds. After an absence, they will also display affection by rubbing up against each other. These interactions are vital in determining and maintaining social order within a pride. Lions are the most social of the big cats, and thus their methods of communication are complex and varied, and there's still much to learn. This makes them one of the most successful predators out in the African bush. But many other species are just as enthralling when it comes to how and why they communicate. So until our next installment of How Animals Communicate and Why, stay safe and see you soon.